what we have discussed, use of while loop for as a loop. Now for example, in this case we iterate it 10 times and we start initialize it, and also we can increment or decrement the variable we use for, and then here we have a condition, right? So with that one we have a control with how many times the loop repeats, and sometimes you don't need to know how many times you need to repeat with while loop, because you can change this, right? So this is what we have exactly done with last time. And then we also look at finding average marks of 10 students, and then we have used the loop as a counting loop where we ran to 10 times. Right, now today my topic is about the for loops. Now when we talk about the for loops, right, for usually we use to iterate over a sequence of objects. Now when we say sequence of objects, what it means, it's not only the numbers, it could be a string or it could be a list, any other sequence of objects. So it's possible, you will see that often we will use for loops when you want to iterate over something, right? So in this particular case we will look at how can we use for the task that we have done with while loop. Now having said that, the first thing that we are going to learn under for loop is range function. We are going to have range function, and with the range function, so there are three things that you should know, right? Now you will see here with the range functions, there could be like three different arguments you can pass, right? So in this particular case we have two arguments, here one, we have three, right? So the standard is like this. Now to do that, let me use this one, right? I will briefly type what we've seen with the range function. So in the range function, the three values specifies three things. So they are, so the start value and stop value and step value. So when we have three, that means it specifies the starting value, then the stop and the step, right? The three places that we have discussed in a while loop, right? Now for example, when you have 1, that means it's so we start with the 2. So if you have two values, that means it specifies start and stop. Now when we say that start and stop, remember, for example, when you take this one, we have the starting value is 1, stop is 5. So when we specify these two, it will go up to this number. So starting is 1. So there's no step. If there's no step specified, that means it's 1. Default value is 1. So it goes like 1, 2, 3, 4. Not including 5. So if you put 5 here, then you will get up to 4. If you put 10 here, you will get up to 9. Okay. So that's how it goes. And if you have a single value with range, so that is specify the stop value, right? Now what it means, you start with the default value is 0. So when you say range 5, it indicates that you start with 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it goes up to 4, not including 5. Now if you have three values, then you have start value, stop value, step value. So you start with 1, and this time step value is 2. That means the first value is 1, then the second value is 3. 1 plus 2, right? If you do not specify the third value, that means it's 1, right? So 1 plus 2 is 3. And the value should be less than 5, right? So that's why we are getting 1 and 3 here. Right. A small quick question. If I want to print numbers, let's say 1 to 10, how should I put the range? Any ideas? Let's say I want to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10. 1 to 10. Yes, which format we have to use? Do I have to use first way, second way, or third way? Yes, Sulochana and Indika already answered. What is the starting value? Is it 0? No. Then you have to specify it. So that means starting value is 1. Right. What should be the stop value? If you want to print 10, then yes, you have to have. Yes, guys. If you want to go up to 10, then it should be 11, isn't it? Right? That's how the 3 values goes. Right. I think now we'll look at some examples. Right. So let me take idle session. So I'm going to open idle. So you can also work with me. Right. So here is the idle session. So for loops looks like this. You say for and you can use any variable name. So let me use number, and then we have a in, then we have a range. Now for example, in this particular case, if I want to print numbers from 1 to 10, you see here it already given to you. You can have start, stop and step. So you can have 1 and the stop. Now if you want to come up with 10, then you have to put 11. And step you don't have to specify since it's 1. And then what will happen? You can simply say print I. So print number. So that's a variable. So what that means, the first time it will take 1. Then second time it will take 2, 3, 4, goes up to 10. Right? Simply you can have a for loop like this. Right. Now can you tell me, if I want to print numbers from 1 to 100, can you tell me what should be the code? I want to print numbers from 1 to 100. Yes? You can type your answer in the chat if you know the answer. Now right now this code will print numbers from 1 to 10. We are using range function and here we have 2 values. The 2 values specify start and stop. Now let's say I want to print numbers from 1 to 100. How should I type the loop? Yes? Prabhat, what do you think? Where should I change? Right? So for example, 4. Right. Now when you say 1 and 11, it means start and stop. Starting value is 1. Stop is 11. When you say 11, it goes up to 10. Right? And the increment is 1. So if I want to print 100, now if you want to print 10, you put 11. If you want to print 100, yes, what should be the value? We can say for number in range. Yes, starting value is 1, then end value, stop value is, yes, Vishaka, Nalin, Ishara, Indika already answered. How about Sulochana? Yeah, it should be 101, isn't it? So we have to put 101 and then we can say print number. Which will print numbers from 1 to 100 when you put 101. Okay, now this time. Now I want to print odd numbers from 1 to 100. Yes, what should I do with this? instead of printing all the numbers between 1 to 100, I want to print only the odd numbers. What needs to be changed? Exactly. So we have to specify step now. That means the third value. So here we have 1, stop is 101, then the third value, the step should be 2. If you put 2, now you see that it will print odd numbers. Okay. Now another change. I want to print even numbers, not odd numbers, from 1 to 100. Which place I should change? I want to print even numbers. Starting from 1. Yes, what is the first even number after 1? Yeah, that's 2, right? First of all, we have to print 2. That means you have to start with 2. So now you can put this is 2, which will give you, print even numbers from 1 to 100. Right. I hope now you got the basic idea of for loop. Right. So I wanted to ask a small question from you. I want everybody to answer this question. I want to print numbers from 10 to 1 using this for loop. Print in numbers from 10 to 1. Right. So you have to think in that way. What is the starting value? Right. What is the starting value? Yes. We want to print numbers from 10 to 1. So that means we have to have 10. Okay. Then what is the stop value? Yes. What should be the stop value? Right, now here the n value should be 0. Why? We want to print up to 1, isn't it? Then the step value should be minus 1. So many of you have actually identified this, right? So if you do that, this will print numbers from 10 to 1. Right, I think now you have the basic understanding of for loop, right? So here are the things that we have discussed. If you want to print numbers from 1 to 10, we can use start and stop. So start will be 1, stop will be 11 to print numbers from 1 to 2. Right, this is the very same example, but using a for loop. Calculate average marks of 10 students. So for loop is a more compact one, and in this loop what we do, we get the marks and we add it to the total, right? And then after that you will get the total and divide by 10 to get average, right? So, and this is not that difficult. Right, to finish our discussion, we can say the for loops are better if you know exactly how many times you are going to repeat something. That means if you know how many times exactly you are going to repeat, then use that. But while loop, when you don't know how many iterations are there, right? So these are the differences that we have observed. Right, I think now we have the basics. So let's go to the Kahoot session, so that now you should be able to answer this, right? So let's start. So please go to www.kahoot.it and wait for the password or pin. Right, and make sure that you are visible, right? Okay, so in this particular case we are going to have the quiz number 3. So let's start. Okay, go to www.it. So you have to go to www.kahoot.it, and the game pin is 8679398. I'll put it in the chat in case if you disconnected, you know how to join. Right, today we have about how many? Roughly about 26. If I remove the administrative staff, hopefully we'll get about 24. Right, I think let's start then. Let's discuss start today's one. Right, okay. Okay, this is number quiz 3. Right, that's good. So let's move to the next one. Okay, so this time Dilhara on the top. Right, that was easy one. So Asela is the highest climber according to the system. Right. Actually, in this particular case, majority got the correct answer. But remember, I told you, true and false in Python, the first letter is capital. So that's where the mistakes comes in. Otherwise, the logic is correct. I think we have discussed last time as well. So in this one, what it says, you need to format this number into one decimal place. When you are using one decimal place, in this case it will round it off, so you should get price 4.0. So there's no answer like this, so that's why the answer is none of the above. Last time we discussed this, what might happen if you divide values. Right, that was easy one. Yes, this time also you are going to round it off to 1 decimal place. Okay, Charit is the highest climber. So let's start. Let's see who's the winner for today's quiz. Right, for loops. So there are three difficult questions. The first one, although you got an error, I think you notice what the error is here. So when you have n equals 10 and this is the operator, we know that n is not greater than 10 and n is not less than 10, so both cases false. So the answer should be false. The problem here is like we had false in two different forms, all simple case and then with capital F, and this is the correct answer. Because why? If you ask why, because in Python most of the keywords are in lowercase letters, whereas in this particular case we will see, right, slightly different one. Right. Okay, so the second one, the question asks which of the following loop repeats 5 times. This is an interesting question and you should know this by you have to remember by heart, because whenever you want to repeat like n times, so this is the format you should use. Now when you say range 6, remember it starts with 0, goes up to 5, that means 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that means it will repeat 6 times. So this one actually repeats 6 times. Let's look at this one. When you say range 5, it goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that means it will repeat 5 times. Let's look at this one. When you say range 4, it will repeat 4 times. 0, 1, 2, 3. And here when you say 1, 5, yes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 times. So the correct answer is this. Which means if you want to repeat 10 times, you can use 4x in range 10. If you want to repeat 25 times, you can say 4x in range 25. So make a note of this. The last one is when we have a for loop, we have a range 3. Right, total is 0, then total equal to total plus I. So when you say range 3, you have 3 values 0, 1, 2. So you add 0 and then you add 1, then you add 2, which means 3 is the correct answer. Right. So I think with that we can conclude the Kahoot session. Okay, now we can switch back to where we have stopped. So the next one, I'm going to start with what we call jump statement. Especially when you have control structures, you can go from one place to another using this jump statement. Right. So basically what will happen? Normally in assembly language programming, we don't have selections or repetitions. Instead of what we have is, right, jumping from one place to another, or memory locations. If you take it, you jump from one memory location to another one, right? And when you look at Python, there are 3 jump statements: break, continue, and return. The return keyword I will discuss once we start with the functions. Right, so let's start with break and continue. Right, okay. So I will explain this, but before that let me give you a small example. Now the first thing that I want to discuss with you is, for loop, right? So if you have for I in range 5, and if you say print, let's say dialog, it will print 5 times. The values goes from 0 to 4, but 5 times. Now similarly, if you want to repeat 10 times, you can have 10 here. It will repeat 10 times. So remember this. It's not that difficult, but you need to remember. Now another thing that you can do is you can use to have arbitrary number instead of 5 or 10. Let's say n arbitrary number, and you are going to get it from this one. So we are get the number, and then we are going to repeat that many times, right? Now here is what break does, right? So when you say for I in range, right? So let's say 10. and let's say print dialog, and if you say break, what will happen? It will print only one time. So why, when Python interpreter meets break statement, it will break at that point. So then that's the end of the script, right? So another thing I can do is I can use if selection. So I can say, okay, no problem, we can say, okay, if I is greater than, let's say, 3, right, then only I'm going to break it, right? So when you say 3, we are checking whether I is greater than 3, right? So whenever I greater than 3, that means 4. So with 0, you will get 5 dialog printed as the output. Right, now we can look at the code. Right, so I'm going to use file, new file, and I'm going to split the screen to 2. Right, I'm going to put the code. I'll go one at a time. So the first one is I'm getting a number from the user. Int input enter number. So then we can say for I in range, we can say in, and we can say print I. So let's see what will happen in this code. So let me say file save. So I'll go to desktop. Right, we can say ML2 program number 11. Yes, we can say break. Now what will happen when you run module? So you are basically getting a number in here, right? You are getting from the user, and then you are going to iterate that many times. So let's say we put 12. Yeah, it print from 0 to 11, that means 12 values. Okay. Right, the next one, I'm going to have a break statement. So the break statement is, I'm going to say if I is greater than 9, then break, meaning you have to stop this. Right, now can you tell me without typing? Yes, let's say n is given as 25. The question is, if n is 25, right, we can say when I is greater than 9, right, so that will be break. So it will run up to how many? You can calculate the value, right? So 1, we get 0. So whenever you have 10, for example, right, 10 greater than 9, then that will break out. It will come out from the loop. So let me save and run module. Okay. So if you put 5, no issue, it will print 0 to 4, 5. We can have run module. Right. In this particular case, let me put 25. So after 10, there's no continuity because we have break statement. So this is what you need to remember then. So right, program will break the loop and continue after the loop. So if you have break statement, whenever Python interpreter meets this break, right? So when I is 10, we know 10 is greater than 9, you will break. So you print 10 actually, right? Finally done. So this is a more or less the same way we used to have. Right. Any questions from this break statement? If you are comfortable, can you raise your hands? Okay, thanks guys. We'll move to the next one then. The next one is called continue statement. What continue does, whatever comes after continue will not run. It will go to the next iteration. So if you look at this piece of code, this will repeat 10 times. You print I, and then you divide the I by 2 and you check whether the value is 0. Right. Now here the loop goes from 1 to 10, isn't it? That we already know. It will print 1 with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and so on. Whenever the value is divisible by 2, that means you divide by 2, get the remainder if it is 0. Yes, you can lower the hands.
How can we insert comment on the script?
Yeah, let me show you. Now, let's take this example. I will take this one. Let me take a new file. Right. So, let's say I want to take this. Right. This is the commit hash. So, single line commit, you can have hash. Right. So, I can say, okay, continue statement. Right. Now in this case we have total equals 0, right, and then we have for I in range, that part we know, 1 comma 10, 1 comma 11, which means it goes from 1 to 10. We can say print. So let me say I. Right, and then we can say total equals total plus I. That also we know when you want to calculate the total. Print, we can say total So if you put this one, let me save this, and this time program number 12, we can say continue. So if I run this, see what will happen. Yeah, it will print number 10, and then you add everything, you get 55. Right? So you keep on adding 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus likewise, if you add 10, you will get 55. So in this particular case, this will give us the total number of the total of numbers from 1 to 10. Right, now the continue statement. Let me put continue. So in continue, if you look at, right, if I is divisible by 2. What do you mean by divisible? If I, this is the remainder or modulo is operator, we divide by 2 and we'll check whether it's 0. If that is the case, we'll say continue. Now what will happen? Let's see. First of all, we'll run module. Okay. Spellings continue. Continue. Yes. Now this time total is 25. How come the total is 25? You can have message after this. Now for example, you can say okay, print, we can say I and total. So additional step. So let me run this time, run module. So you see that, right? So this part happens whenever the number is odd number. So if it is 1, we are getting the output, the number and the total. Then number and the total. Then number and the total. Number and the total. Number and the total. So we are basically getting 25 here. Right? So basically it will add up all the odd numbers from 1 to 10. Right. So the continue does, it will actually skip this part. So whenever the value is even number, for example 2 divided by 2 is 0, and you say continue, which means you are not going to add it to the total or the print one. So look at here. So all the even numbers, nothing printed. Nothing printed. So that's the reason. Right. Any questions from this continue statement? Are you comfortable with continue and break? Okay. So you can lower the hands. Right. So that's about the jump statement. So we have discussed break, and then we had continue statement. So the break means you come out from the loop. Right, let's move on to functions. Now we know that functions are quite common, and we have already used a couple of functions available in Python. Like we started looking at print, right, then type, right, and so on. So in this case, the function is basically name given a set of statements. So it simplifies the code, as well as it helps to structure the code properly. So here is how we define a function in Python. So you start with the def keyword, defining a name, that means the name of the functions, and any parameters you list them. Right, let me explain this with one of the examples. So in this one, right, okay, so let me take the idle session. Right, now let's say I'm trying to find a function to add two numbers. And if I try, Python will say there's no class for add. It's not defined. So which means if you have a something to add like this, first of all you have to define the function. So let's define it. We can say def add, okay, whatever the parameters you want to get. Let me say the number 1 and number . So if that is the case, we can say okay, print, right, number 1 plus number 2. Right, now we have defined the function, then now we can use it. So let's use the previous one again. Now it's identify the parameter names and it says 5. So the same keyword can be used for, let's say, right? Integers, right? Floating point numbers, that's also working as. So here it should be comma. Yes, it says 8.1. Similarly, if you have two strings, right, so when you put it like this, we have to put comma, sorry. So the beauty of this add operation compared to the other languages, when you define a function, right, so you can provide appropriate parameters as well as the details about the surroundings. It's not something like, you know, finding maybe apartment, right? So we will now learn how to create functions. Right, and then whenever you want to access the values in this, so what you need to do is you define it, then you will have two values. So 2 will assign to, right, so here the 2 will assign to number 1 and 3 will assign to number 2. Right, okay. I want you to write a code for me, right? I want you to define a function to calculate area of a rectangle. Function definition is enough, so you can try now. Right, those who have finished, you can raise your hands. Now in this one we want to calculate area of a rectangle, which means we have to take two things, isn't it? Two inputs. Okay, for example, let me say length and the width. Right, so let's design. So I'm going to use a new file, and then I'm going to put a comment first saying that Python function to find area of a rectangle. Right, now what's the first step? You have to say def. Okay, name of the function, so I'm going to say area, let's say a rectangle, right, and then you need two values, so let me say length and the width. Yes, and we know you have to multiply length and width together, so we can say okay, print length and so we'll put it this way. So now you can run module. Okay, you need to save it. Right, now we have created, so we can now calculate, you can use it, area rectangle. Yes, we are getting like this. Okay, if you have finished up to this point, can you please raise your hands? Right, we have Charita, Sela, Amila, and Janaka. Okay, Janaka done, right? Okay. Right. The next thing I am going to discuss about some built-in functions available in Python. Right. Now right now we have calculated several functions. We have calculated, actually create two functions, add function and area rectangle one. Right. Now in this particular case, right, I want to discuss something where we have this, right, with the existing one. So these are called built-in function, which means without using any other libraries, we can directly call these functions. Right. Now for example, let's say ABS. Now ABS gives us absolute value. So ABS, we can say 5 absolute value. So ABS minus 5. Right. So if you know details, so we can say help ABS. Will tell, it will return the absolute value of the argument. Similarly, power of, right. So you can, if you want to get 2 to the power 9, so this is how we will give. It give us 512. So help, yes, you get base, exponentiation, and then mod. Right, and then let's take max. Max slightly different. You can take any arbitrary number of arguments. So if you put 7 and 11, yes, it says 11. And if you have like multiple values, right, we'll get, so you can have arbitrary number of parameters, arguments. Now there's something different, these functions, with the function we have discussed. What is the function? Our add function. Let me elaborate. Okay, so it says not defined. Let me say def add number 1 and number 2, and we said print number 1 plus number 2. Right. Now the previous one, when we say ABS minus 5, let's try to get this to a variable, the answer. So let me say answer. I'm going to get let's say 2 to the power 10, 2 comma 10. So if I enter, it will store in answer variable, and then when you want to display it, we can say print answer. So we'll get 1024. Now let's try this with our add function as well. So this time I'm going to say okay, answer 1. I'm going to say add 2, 3. You see a value, and then when you try to print ANS, you are getting none. Okay, reason is, now these functions will actually return the answer back into the main program. So that's why this can hold a value. Whereas in this case, when you say add 2, 3, you go to that function, you add 2, 3, and that's all. Right? So that's why when you're assigning, it will just display because it's a print function. Similarly, when you print ANS1, so there's nothing actually came back from this function call. So because of that, it will be none. Okay, so to make a function with return values, remember you have to use return, right? So let me use return keyword. So the same thing we can define. We can say def add number 1, number 2, right? And then we will say, instead of print, we will say return. We will say number 1 plus number 2. Now if you try the same thing again, see the difference. Now you can assign the value. Nothing will come out. And if you print, you will get the correct answer. So remember, when we are defining functions, you can define functions without getting any return value. But it's always recommend you get a value. Right? Return value is better because then you can assign further process from the values. Right, now with that one, let's completely write a program using the function. So that's what we are going to discuss next. So the first one is we need to have a function, right? So with that one, we are going to define a function. Right, define the function. So we will have def add, we'll say number 1, number 2, and basically we will return number 1.
How do we remove the define function?
Sorry?
How do we remove the define function?
What do you mean by remove?
So if I def add number 1 and number 2 mean the add is the function, no?
Exactly, yes. Now when you say def is the defining a function, that the keyword indicate that we are defining a function, and add is the
just memorizing the system.
Yes, exactly. So the keywords are, yeah. So it's like a keyword. Now we said these are keywords, which means it's like an alphabet. Whenever we use def keyword, interpreter will record it as a function and the function name as add. So previously we didn't have a function called add. So with def we can define a function.
We can really use it inside the program.
Exactly, yes. And this is exactly what we are going to learn. Now we will learn how to write functions, but later we will learn there are plenty of already written functions which we can use for various tasks. Now for example, machine learning, it's one part now quite popular nowadays. So there are a lot of libraries out there. You can directly call these functions within your program. Okay, so now I actually put this as a separate file because I want to have a complete program. So we will create the define the function add again and with the return Right, now this is the function. Now usually when you want to add, let's say you can use it from get numbers from the user. So if I say I, and we can say input, enter the first number, we are getting a 1 number from the user, and we store it as a I. Now if it is a number, we discussed in previous session, we have to convert into either to int or float, depending on your requirement. So I am assuming that I am always expecting int value from the user. Similarly, I can get the second number as well. In similar way, I can say okay, right. So I got these two. Now let me take a separate variable to find the total of the two. Basically, we can call the function and we can put I and j. Now calling the functions mean I will get the values and I will pass this I to number 1, j to number 2. Here there will be adding these two values, I plus j will return back here, and the answer will be saved as total. And in the final step, we can say the total is right. Now let me run. Okay, first of all we need to save, so I'll take the desktop. Right, now this time it's actually should be 13, earlier one should be 12, so let me put 13. Right, functions, and this is what we are getting. So it has the first number, so let me put 30, the second one is 40, it says 70. But what really happens? So what really happens? What really happens, actually it'll pass these values I. So here we will have I, right? So this I will pass it to number 1, this j will pass it to number 2, and then you will get the addition, right? It will add up. So this is the result. When you say return, this result will come back and assign to this whole expression, right? So that's how the flow happens. So this I and j will assign to number 1 and number 2, then number 1 plus number 2, then again the result returned back here. That is the total, and finally we can print it out. Right. If you finish up to this point, can you please raise your hands? Now earlier case we had just print. When you have print, there's no value coming, right? There's no value come back from function to your main program, right? If you finish up to this point, please raise your hands. Right, we have Amila, Hishan, Kalana and Lahiro to finish. We'll wait for few minutes. Others already finished, it seems. Right, okay, thanks. Then we'll move on to the next one then. Okay, so I want you to write a complete program, not a function. Let's say Python, let's say program. To calculate calculate area of a rectangle, but get let's say length and the width from the user, and then you may call it similar to the program we have just written. Okay, shall we start? So the first step, you can create a function to calculate area of a rectangle, and then you can request the equivalent values from the right. So let's start together. So let me take a new file. We need to write a Python right. So first of all, you need to write the function, right, and then get user inputs, then function call, finally the output, right. So this is exactly what we are going to do. First of all, the function. Now we need to create a Python function to calculate area of a rectangle. So how do you start? We can have def name of a function. So we will say length, so we need to return with multiplying these two, right? So that part I have already done. Can you fill the remaining? So when you say get user inputs, so we need to get length and the width by calling a function. So we can call the functions like, let's say the answer is area. We can say area rectangle. Let's say the two values are L and W. So here we have to get what is L is L equals, let's say, int input enter length of the rectangle, then w equals the same thing, we can say int input, enter width of the rectangle, right, we got the two, and then we will calculate the area. Finally we can say print, okay, we can do like that if you want. For example, we can say the and here we need to have area, right? So when you run module, okay, here we have 14, right? Now it lasts length of the rectangle 100, with let's say 50, it says 5000. Right, I think we have done two small scripts to get multiple user inputs and the outputs. Right, if you have finished, can you please raise your hands, please? Right, okay, let's move to the next one. You can lower the hands now. Thanks. Next thing is, already, I guess, so sometimes you can call functions within other functions. Now let's take these two examples. Now the first one will tell us area rectangle, you have width and height, and then it will written width and height. So in this particular case, it's taken as width and height. And then if you want to calculate area of a square, you need that knowing one side is enough. That means you need to know only length only. What you need to do is you multiply length by length. Now instead of that one, in this one we are calling the previous one. Why? We already have this. So we are calling area rectangle inside the area square, and we know that in area rectangle you have to pass two values, one value for width, one value for height. But we know in square both are the same, so all the sides are the same, which means so for both width and height we can put length and length, right? So when somebody call area square, then what will happen? So whatever the value will assign here, so that's this first point, right? And then it will actually call this function, and you are passing length value. So that means this length value, pass it to width, right? and the second length value pass it to height, and this answer is returned back where it is called, right? So which means this will notice you when you write the code. Usually you can make use of existing functions. Let's say you have existing function and you want to improve it or change it. Similar ideas could be considered. Right. A couple of problems I want you to try. First one, I want you to write a function and get a person name. Now, for example, something like, let me show you some examples, so that will be better, I guess. Now, something like, okay, greeting. Let's say Sampath. If I type it like this, it should tell me like hello Sampath. And similar way, if I say greeting, let's say Saman, it should say hello Saman. So that's the first task. Okay. And the second one is you have given the temperature value in Fahrenheit to degrees conversion. So let's start with this one. Indika, you have finished? Pasan? Or you have raised your hands in the previous case?
Sorry for previous.
No, it's okay. Perfectly alright. I thought like you have quickly finished it all. It's okay, no problem. The first function I want to know something like greeting and a person's name will tell, hello and the person's name. Second one, I want to get a function to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit. And then you need to convert into degrees Celsius. So this is the formula. Those who have finished, can you share your code for the first one? We'll start with this. Right, it's simply string concatenation. You get whatever the input and you print it hello with that name. Simple as that. Okay, so we got the answers from Sulochana, Janaka, Saumya. Easy, right? You can try the second one. Right, others we can go together. Right, so let's have a new file. Or you can just simply type the command here as well. We can say def greeting. Let's say we take name, and we can say okay. We can say hello. That's all right. So now we can call it. We can say print greeting name. That's all. So let's run module. Right, so let me put Sampath. It says hello Sampath. So every time you run it, it says hello Kanchana. Right, that's the first one. Right, now Celsius to Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion is here. Yes, how do you come up with this one? Yes, how do you come up with this one? Second one, why did you try this? Yes, let's start with the second one. Right, we can create a function, let's say def. Let me say Fahrenheit to Celsius in this way. We get the value in Fahrenheit, and simply you can say return 5 times F minus 32 divided by 9. That's all right. So let's run module. Right, this is program number 16. Right, now we have this. We can check now. We can say F to C 32. It says 0. It's worked fine. Right. Those who have finished up to this point, can you please indicate that you have finished? Simple one would be you simply raise your hands. Right, if you want to make it a complete program, you can get input from the user. Now for example, let's say temperature, or in short we'll say temp. We can say okay, int input, we can enter temperature in Fahrenheit. So we can get the values in Celsius. We can say F to C. Okay, we will get it as temp. And finally we can have, like, if I use F string, the temperature in Celsius is, we can say Celsius. Right, so let's run and observe. Run module. So it says that value temperature 32. Yes, it says temperature in Celsius is 0. Run. Let me run one more time. Let's say 50. It says 10. Right. let me run. Let me put 60. Okay, now you see there are a lot of decimal places. So if you want to limit it, we already know what to do, right? You can put a colon, and then you can see how many decimal places. I will put only decimal places. Let's say 3 decimal places. I can put it like this, right? Now let me run module. If I put 60 again, yeah, so now the temperature is actually limited to 3 decimal places. Right, I think now we have got the idea of functions as well. We have created our own set of functions, and we also learned how right now in this particular case we got the temperature value in Fahrenheit, and using the function we convert into Celsius, and then we put the result with 3 decimal places, right? So far we have learned how to write our own set of functions, and we also look at how to use them in our program. Right, okay, now similar thing that we are going to do next, right? I want to discuss 2 more things about this function calls. Now let's look at this piece of code without typing it in Python. So we have a variable a, and then we have a change a, and inside this one we have a equals a, and then here you will print a, then you call the function, and then you print again a. The question asks, okay, what is the output? What is the output? Any guesses? If you type this and run, yes, what values we will get?
0, 0.
Yes, we are getting 0, 0. Any other answers? Everybody agrees that we are getting 0, 0? Right, it's like this. Yeah, better to have a script, so I'm going to get a script for this. Right, now it's like a equals 0. We have a variable a, and then we have a function change a, and within that we are going to say 1. If you say print a, and then you will say change a, and when you say print a again. Question asks, what is the output? Right. So let me save it, and then I'll explain. Right, it's 0, 0, true. The reason is, now some confuses when you say print a, nothing, we have not called this one, the a value is 0, so first a should get 0. Then you call change a, and then you go here. Third one again, print a. Right. Now the reason why these are two different, So somebody can think, okay, this is print A, it will print 0. When you say change A, you call this A becomes 1 and this is 1. No. Reason is whatever we define within a function, this A is within the function. That is we call local variable and it is not visible to the outside. So this A and this A is slightly different. They are not the same. So since this is local variable, it does not appear to the outside. So the outcome is 0, 0. But say some reason you want to change it. Then use global. Right, like import. So in this particular case, global means it can be accessed in other places as well. Now let's run and observe the outcome. Run module. Now we are getting 0 and 1. Why? Because this A, with this statement, we say this A and the A outside the function are the same. So the term local variable we use whenever variables we create inside the function are local to the function. So whatever the variables we create inside the function, right, are local to the function. Right. So global variables or the global keyword tells the Python interpreter that, they can be used.
What if we return it, then it will give the output, right?
Exactly, yes. So if we have return instead of, let me go back. So when you say return, somewhere we have to keep the value, right? Either we have to store or it will output. But the point here is, it's not the same way. When you say return A, it's an outcome, right? So if you want to visible the variable outside of the function, so we have to define A as a global variable. Then only Python interpreter can see that these two are the same with the global keyword.
Shouldn't the global variable be defined before the function?
It depends on how programming languages are designed usually. So in Python, we define it like this, within this. So what the meaning of global here, it means the variable A that you have defined inside is a global, which means it's now visible to the outside.
So it will be only made global when the function is called, right?
Exactly, yes. So when you call the function, then you define A inside as global and then you are going to say is 1, which will change the value. So that's why when this happens, so we are getting 0 and 1 here. So initially we have 0 and that actually changed, right, to 1. Right, so read about this and I'll share the slides as well. If you think that it's a little bit confusing about the local and global, so if you have already learned some other programming language, you can compare what we have discussed today with that knowledge as well. And next week, we will start looking at the modules. So that's the beauty. We are going to witness the beauty of Python. There are a lot of libraries available. So we are going to look at simple ones like math, module, and then we have this turtle module where we can draw graphics and so on. And then later on we will going to look at the numerical Python, then pandas and the machine learning, right? So these are the things that I will actually try to cover in the remaining. So but before that you have to be very comfortable with the basics in Python before we are going to talk about these details. Right, so let's have the last activity. We have about 2 minutes. So what we want to do is basically we are going to look at what we have done. So let me quickly share this. Right, sorry about the delay.